We're here. You got your tight shirt on today?
Hey, everybody's talking about my tight pants. Oh, that's tight shirt, tight pants.
Today it's a tight shirt.
It is a tight shirt today. I'm just going to try and log in here so I can keep track of any comments. All right, I'm good. I'm just going to try and log in. Hey, playing it back.
The start of our live videos are always us getting ourselves situated.
Bon jeudi, Jody.
Is this like your thing?
I like it. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. We are back again. These weeks fly by, don't they?
They do. Do you know what Thursday it is today?
It's a big day for Mark.
It's round one of the Masters Thursday.
He's watching the Masters while he works.
I'm peeking at the Masters occasionally, and just to be clear, I have no billable work today. So my clients, I'm not watching the Masters on your dime, just to be clear.
That's fair.
Really
That's
important.
A fair statement.
Really important how we address that now. So,
alrighty. Well, last week we talked about how to kind of start researching and networking online. If you're thinking about making
your network is your net worth. Can I say all the cheesy sayings as you bring
move in your career? This week we're gonna move on.
I'm feeling a little goofy. It's Thursday. Go ahead. Sorry, my bad. She hates when I do that.
It's fine. This is like every day, so I don't react as much as he wants me to anymore.
She thought I was funny at the beginning, but
it's been a long while. It's been a long pandemic.
Houses.
Anyway, today we're talking about, you land the interview and you're super excited about the role. How do you best prepare yourself for that interview so that you can go in with confidence, knowing you've got what it takes to land the role?
Gotta crush it, because there's a lot of people out there that want the role you want. Here's the beauty. I'm not sure everyone's doing the right research to prepare for those interviews and taking that opportunity to stand out. But most importantly, in the context of what's important to the organization that's considering hiring you. There's a lot of parallels, shameless plug, to my sales training. You know, I spend a lot of time saying before you pick up the phone and call somebody or send that email, go research, find out what they're about. So when you do reach out, it's in the context of what they're trying to accomplish and how you can fit. Same thing with a job interview. So
it's basically like selling yourself. Any job interview is like selling yourself through. You're just not selling a product or service. You're selling your own experience.
Right.
As an asset to them.
But just like in sales, you can get caught in the same trap of talking about you in the context of what you think is important.
Right.
Instead of in the context of what's important for the customer, in this case, the organization that's considering bringing you on board.
Right.
Because we don't do the right research. First of all, some people don't even research for a job interview. They just kind of show up and hope they get it. So if you're one of those people, stop doing that now. Others, they'll go through the corporate website a little bit and they'll find out what the company's vision and values so they can mention them at the interview to show they did a little bit of research. And that's important. It's a step. But what we're going to teach you today is going to help you stand out a little bit. So how do you take it to that next level?
Super duper. What's the first phase?
Well, just like in the sales training, I thank you for the prompt. Let me look at my notes, Jody.
I'm just the moderator.
Well, just like a sales call, the first step is to do that research that I talked about. So, and it's how you do it. So if you know you are interviewing at Acme Widget Company, let's say, and you're interviewing for, I'm going to keep it easy, a sales role, right? Because that's what I've always been in it. And so what you want to do is you want to go out and research Acme Widget Company on their corporate website, like I just said. And then you want to look at their LinkedIn profile, the corporate profile. You want to look at the LinkedIn profile of the person who's interviewing you. And then you want to look and Google search the company and see if there's any news or media releases, etc. Now, why is all of that important? Well, what you want to do is you want to put down 1 to 3 points that are really important from a business perspective for them. And you will find them. Companies post this stuff all the time. We're expanding because to the West Coast as our revenue has grown 300% in the last 2 quarters. Well, if you can come in aligned to their growth initiatives in your interview and give examples of where you've helped other companies do that, that's a quick tie-in that other candidates may not be doing. So here's a silly example. well, a good example, but a simple example is what I should say. So you want to go in, I start with LinkedIn. I try and find out a little bit about the person who's interviewing me. I look at their corporate LinkedIn page to see if they've shared any articles about the business and what they're doing, social days, things that are important to them. And then, yes, I go to that corporate website and I dive down and I find out about their services. They may be talking about new services that they've released to the market. They may be talking about sales results for the organization. They may have in the updates and info public board reports where it talks to those significant results and growth areas in the business. And I try and jot down a few things that are of importance to them. Okay, so that's my first column. And then my next column is me. And I try to look for examples where I've provided that value in other companies or potentially even other industries. Remember, if you look at my resume, if you were to go through my resume, I usually only have a career change for progression. Right? I've got somewhere, I've been there 4 or 5 years, I'm getting stagnant, I'm getting bored, there's not an opening yet. Someone comes along and either recruits or I see a post and I go for that growth opportunity. And I've always done it across industries. So I've been able to use this technique to get promoted, usually in a completely different industry. How do you go from selling running shoes to selling wireless plans and cell phones? And go from a store manager to an area manager? How do you go from an area manager doing cell phones to a director of consumer products for a pro sports and entertainment organization? How do you go from there to doing VP of sales and marketing for a printing company? And how do you go from there to being a senior executive in home building? It's about going and researching where the company is going and finding out the behaviors that you've demonstrated in your career in other industries, if that's the case, but usually the same industry, that can show you can bring that there and align with their mission and goals. So I get those few things that are really important to them from a business perspective or even a vision and values perspective, and growth opportunities and products and services and all that stuff that I'm going to be able to speak to. So when they ask me a behavioral based question, the old tell me a time when, you know why they're asking you that. They want to figure out if the skill set and the behaviors that you bring are going to work there. I get a step ahead. So, I see that, from your research that you've recently brought in your own in-house sales team. And you've always outsourced that. I would imagine that's why I'm sitting at the table. So let me give you a specific example where I've implemented sales training and the result it's had on the salespeople and on the business results. And then off I go. Well, you know what? What I do if I came into this organization would look similar to my past. What I did was I created a 5-step behavioral sales process. And then I trained everyone and implemented weekly one-on-ones to hold each individual accountable. And then, just to make sure the behaviors were being performed, we engaged a third-party mystery shopping firm. So even when we couldn't be there, we had this nice random snapshot of whether those trained behaviors were working. And then I had a KPI dashboard that ensured all the financials were being hit. But I started with those behaviors. Now there's an example where I've answered an interview question knowing something about why you're doing what you're doing and demonstrating how I've done it in the past. Those are how you answer those behavior-based questions. Think of it as, now I'm going to age myself. You probably didn't do this when you were in school. Did you guys have transparency projectors when you were in school? Where it was like the big, yeah. Okay. So you remember how some of the teachers would like start with one and it was like, black and white outline and some words in, and then they'd layer in the next one on top and it had color for that square. And now you were talking about that point. Think about your job search the same way. Think about the behaviors you want to perform in your research the same way. The transparency bottom level is what you learn about the company. And then the way you answer questions about your background and how you can help is the transparency that goes on top to show and highlight why you're a fit for those needs. If you can't tell people that story in the context of where they're trying to go, your chances of getting hired have dropped. Here's the beauty, like I say in the sales training. No one's doing it. Like not no one, that's an exaggeration. Now I'm Donald Trump. Many people say. No one's doing it. The minority of people are doing it, right? And the reason I share that is I've done this at the table, trying to go from manager to director or director to VP or VP to president. and I've looked for it on the other side of the table. And those are all the candidates who always stand out. They can say, oh yeah, I understand where you guys are going. Let me give you an example of where I think I can help with that. Here's what I very literally draw that transparency line between where they want to go and how you can support it, and be specific about the behaviors you performed and the business results. So a lot of people will say, in interviews, tell me about a time, Jody, where you had a stressful event in your past in event management. And if you
how did you handle it?
And how did you handle it? Great. So what you want to do is talk to the behaviors. So what happened was, boy, we had 3 key partners, and they were all grasping for my time. I couldn't get to all of them and show them the attention they need. So what I did was I had morning meetings, and I brought in my 3 partners, found out what their priorities were, and then I went to my event coordination team that was on site, and I allocated those challenges to them, and I put a process in place to check in with the partner at the end of the day and have a meeting. Now, those would be the behaviors that showed how you solved the problem, but then you want to talk about the result, even if it's not solicited. And so let me tell you what that did. We retained all 3 of those clients the following year for the event, and they upped their spend based on the experience they had. We found that out because we did a post-event survey, and then, of course, rubber hits the road when they signed the invoice the next year. They all returned and they spent more money. Now, that's the way you answer a behavior-based question with a measurable at the end.
That's a good point, though, that you made, too, is
breathe.
Not only have you interviewed for a number of roles for your own career progression, but as a senior level executive, you've done a ton of hiring in your career, right? And usually, I think for you, they were vetted by HR first through some sort of process, and then got put in front of you, sometimes with an HR person, maybe usually in an interview. But if they're coming onto your team, I think ultimately you would have a say whether they're the candidate that you want or not.
It always lies with the hiring manager. Right. I mean, different organizations, HR influence it a little more.
And so for you to share that those are the things that you would be looking for within that process, I think is more relatable for most people that would be watching, going for kind of from those promotions, manager to director type of promotions. So sitting on the other side of the table, the way you do, those are specific things that you look for too in their responses, right?
Yeah, and again, depends on the level I'm hiring for. Like, I would expect an executive at the table who I'm hiring as a VP when I'm a president to show up that way. And if they don't, and all they do is speak to their resume, which I've already been able to read.
But it would be different for like more of an entry-level account executive type role, where they don't have a ton to go back onto. And
what I'll do is I'll probe. I that's my responsibility as a hiring manager to get there. Okay, well, and I'll be very transparent. Here's what I'm trying to figure out. We're really, really on a growth surge right now. So we're highly measuring our metrics, and especially on this vertical. So call it, I don't know, running shoes in retail. I'm just going to throw one out. We really want to drive footwear. And so tell me about your experience as a store manager driving footwear sales in a location. And I will be very specific with them at that level. The further up you go, the more I expect it. Now, if you take Mark Pettipon's tips today and show up that way at an entry-level position or a first-level manager position, you are going to blow away anyone interviewing.
Yeah, a huge
blow them away.
Yeah, because just nobody's preparing that way.
Nobody's doing that, and then you got to treat it just like a sale. And I go back to my sales training. No one's doing that either. And here's the problem: we're all showing up the same way, so HR managers are stuck. They all their candidates look the same, and everyone's talking about this labor shortage. Imagine if you showed up that way. How quickly are you going to get the job? Because now you can help align with where they're trying to go. I think it's so again, entry level, you can use those skills. If you're being probed to ask those questions, start thinking about behaviors and the result it created. If you're going for a role where you're going to support people, the one big mistake that I see is leaders come to those interviews and they talk about the team result, right? Like, I led a team of 10 people and here's what they did. But they don't talk about the behaviors they changed in the people that allowed that result to happen. Right. So, hey, we had a 15% sales gain when I was the manager of Cookies Plus Canada. of Southwestern Ontario. Cookies Plus can't be a thing. If it is, there's your business idea. You're welcome. And we had 6 stores, and we generated a 15% sales increase. And the hiring manager will either go, that's great, you lost the opportunity to tell me why. Or they'll say, well, how'd you create it? Oh, I had sales meetings every month, and we went through the expectations by category and made sure chocolate chip was moving just as much as double stuffed, and double stuffed was moving just as much as the wafer cookies, and we really lifted that category. Okay? But how did you make all that stuff happen? Oh, right? And what, at the leadership level, when you're supporting people, what hiring managers want to see is, what is the behavioral track you can change that will ensure they're going to get scalable results that will stick? And if you can't demonstrate that, it's going to hurt your chances. So for that same Cookies Canada Plus manager, Cookies Plus Canada or Cookies Canada Plus, to say, listen, one of the things I observed in our retail locations, we weren't greeting the client quickly enough. And when the store was busy, people were leaving, they were walking outside the door. I noticed that on my monthly visits with my managers. So what I went back is I went and made that a major theme of our coaching sessions. And I had an all-store training session where I just set some simple behaviors on what we expect of people walking through the door. It actually increased our conversion rate 60 days later, and that conversion rate generated that sales result. That is the level that hiring managers want to see when you lead people. And again, the good news is there's not a lot of people speaking that way. Now, I go back to what I talked about at the beginning to tie this together. The faster you know about the company, the more you can steer your answers from your behavior to their desired result. Mm-hmm. So like when they ask you a question about, tell me about a time you led a team and you weren't getting the results you wanted as a leader. Well, I'll tell you what, similar to you, we were in a growth pattern at company XYZ. And to get that growth, we needed the entire team on board. And the district I inherited was 11% down on same-store sales year over year. So we want a growing company, and I've got a deficient district. Here's what I did. Boom, 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 behavior, example, example. And we brought that 11% decrease to the following year to a 19% year over year result, which was actually now above the corporate average of 14%. And so now I've steered that entire behavioral piece aligned with my research saying they wanted to grow as a company. It was very clear in the article I read or the LinkedIn page or their corporate website, etc. Now again, it could be business growth, it could be new products, it could be employee development. Like imagine you get to an organization and their homepage is splashed about their vision and values, and our organization is a great place to work because people learn new skills, grow and develop, and stay here longer than anywhere else. Well, Mark Petitpaw's all over that one, right? And I'm saying, geez, you know what? I'm so aligned with that. Let me tell you why. I've spent my career delivering business results as a leader by focusing on a 5-step process to improve employees' lives while driving business results. Let me talk to you about what I wrote in my book and what my training process is. And now I'm hitting that home run in the context of what they believe in and demonstrating how I did it. So again, I go back to the beginning, find in your research that the step everyone's missing, what's important to them. So when they ask you the situational question, you put it in the context of what's important to them and then talk about the behaviors and the measurable result that it achieved. Now,
I have a question.
I was going to say one more thing, but I'm rambling here. But I'm not really rambling. I'm just dropping bombs.
Just talk a lot.
HR bombs. That was not a bomb. It's like a fart. See, she still thinks I'm funny.
Oh boy. Okay.
Weren't you lucky marrying me?
How do you prepare?
Serious. Boardroom face.
How do you prepare for those situational questions when you don't know what they're going to be?
I just answered.
Sometimes they just throw you right off.
But I just gave you that. That was my answer.
Just by using your own column to think about all the things.
Think about what's important to them, know what you can do, what your value equation, what you bring is, and tie those things together to any situational question.
I guess so. I just think sometimes when a situational question gets put to you,
give me an example.
It takes you a minute.
Give me an example. Can you give me an example of what would be a difficult situational question? Because you're right, because that's what candidates struggle with. So that's okay. But can you give me an example where you've had a difficult question? Or can you make one up?
Like, give me an example of a time when something didn't go the way you wanted it to go, and what you would do differently if you could redo the experience.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, and I see that, you know, the organization is really focused on opening new stores. Let me give you an example from my sports and entertainment days to answer that exact question. We were opening up BMO Field, and I had multiple employees on my team, and we were getting closer to opening, and the stuff on the checklist that we did a daily walkthrough to make sure we were on top of all the construction items as well as the event items, it wasn't getting done. And then, worse, bolts were falling from the sky. Like literally the bolts that were attached to the stands and we're opening up, they're falling. And so, you know what I didn't do well and wasn't going my way was I panicked. I didn't believe in my process. I got frustrated and I had a terrible communication with the team. Trying to motivate them, I actually demotivated them.
I remember it well.
Right. So here's what I did. And this is what I've learned from my career that I think will help with our growth aspirations, is keeping everybody in tune with the project and probably having a few more touch points. I let it go too far and we got too deficient too fast. And so what I did was I put a midday checkpoint in with all of my directors and managers so I can get to it closer. It was a 10-minute walkthrough. We made sure we were on top of anything so I can get ahead and help them with any issues. That's the way I'd like to bring that from a store opening perspective. You know, I'd like to not only do my morning meetings with my managers who are opening the store at the new location in Square One, but I want to do a midday check-in. I'm going to come into the store and I'm going to see how they're doing to make sure we're going to hit the milestone of having the shoe wall done that day, as an example. Those are the things I learned at BMO Field that I believe could help us here. Right? So there's always something to draw back on. The problem is we get in an interview because we're not prepared, we freeze. Like, oh, geez. And then you're like, oh, can I say that? Are they going to read that the wrong way? And like, but if you've prepared based on those, where they're trying to go and you know a little bit and you can demonstrate your behaviors, you'll be successful in closing that gap. I have very rarely interviewed using these core skills throughout my entire career. When I got to an interview, not got the job or not been one of the final 3 candidates. And when I haven't got it, sometimes it's because someone probably just interviewed as great as me and they've been in that industry for 10 years.
Have you ever been completely stumped by an interview question?
Yes. When I was interviewing for a job I probably shouldn't have been interviewing for. So I'm glad you said that. That oh my God, what a great... Did you do that on purpose? We were just talking about how much smarter you are than me today. See, she's proven it now. When you are doing your research, be true to yourself. If you can't find things or you find things that aren't aligned to where you can help, you don't have any past experience in other industries, or it's too much of a knowledge gap in this one, you know, don't be shy to either say, I'm going to have to decline. I've done my research and I just don't think it's valuable time for you. I don't think I'm a fit. Or as you've done your research, when you apply, don't apply. Because I have had that happen. I think it was, oh boy, Stevenson Rental. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Okay, a long time ago, before I was ever in construction, or I think it might have been between. It might have been between Athletes World and TELUS. And again, this was my theme of wanting to become a district manager from a store manager at the time. And then when I was a DM, I wanted to be a director and a director. I've always wanted that progression and responsibility. Anyways, I applied for Stevenson Rental as a district manager. And I got the interview. Holy shit.
This was a long time ago.
I was preparing. Right, I didn't have
it was
these.
Before you even learned any of these diligent behaviors.
Well, the behaviors in any at least a little function. You know me with putting a screw in the wall. And the interview was all functionally based. Like, you know, what would you do if, you know, you needed a tool kit for this construction site and a zoom boom over here.
I'm laughing because I can just picture it.
And I'm fucking skating. And I couldn't answer the questions because they're all functionally based. So I should have, to your point, when I was doing my research and it didn't feel right, just because I wanted the role so badly, I went and interviewed.
There's a difference between it not feeling right because you don't necessarily feel like you have the skill set or you're not aligned with the organization. There's a difference between that and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone into a new level of management or type of role, right? Like you've counseled people on job application processes before where they've said like, I actually don't know if I have the functional skill set, but I know I can do it. Or I actually haven't led a team in this way, so how do I talk about leadership? Right. Those kinds of things that, if you want to progress your career, you got to push yourself out of that comfort zone a little bit.
Yes.
And be able to sell yourself on how you can fill those gaps.
Yeah, so great point. And to answer that, like, I never shied away from more zeros and more employees. Mm-hmm. It's never intimidated me. As long as I knew I had the behaviors that would work there, I went for it. I went for that next opportunity. Give me more stores, give me more employees, give me a friggin' soccer stadium. I could figure it out. I also have Bob holding my hand so I could get it open. But the point being is the core behavior around leadership and knowing business strategy was what was giving me the confidence in that point in my career to go get. Mm-hmm. When the TELUS thing came along and I knew nothing about cell phones and wireless plans and all that, I had been selling running shoes and t-shirts up to that point, I wasn't intimidated because all it was another store and a different product and I could learn it. And so I knew it was above me because at that point I still hadn't been a district manager, right? I was like a local area manager for Roots. I had like Square One and oversaw another little location for Martin at the time. TELUS was my first DM job. But when I went into that interview, I just spoke to my behaviors as a leader in generating results in retail. And I was very comfortable doing that at TELUS Mobility. Now, the reason I was versus Stevenson, I think, was I did my research before the interview and I saw the corporate values. Mm-hmm. I saw what they believed in. I saw what the offerings were and I could get my head around, well, you get a cell phone and there's different technologies and you pay X per month and you get more service. I couldn't get my head around drills.
Jackhammer.
Tables, like manly stuff. I couldn't figure it out. But so I had no problems going for that next step as long as I knew my behaviors and the confidence in them could take me there. That's why Fusion, as an example, when I was interviewing with Lee at the time, and it was Alicia at the time as well, that was a Stevenson moment for me. Like, I can't build a house. How am I going to help a team sell one? But as I did the research about Lee and what he believed in, and the company and what they stood for from a customer service perspective, and their existing sales model versus where they wanted to go, I knew my behaviors could close that gap. I knew I had a functional, huge discrepancy. And so I brought that up in the interview to say, listen, here's how I will set up your sales organization. Here's how I've done it in the past to help us scale and grow with that context of winning Terrion awards that are so important to this company from a customer service perspective. Here's how I measure that and train that. Here's how we'll hold the team accountable, but develop their skills. But I've got to be transparent. You asked me what I think my biggest challenge would be. I don't know what an agreement of purchase and sale is. I've sold $30 t-shirts my entire life, not $1 million homes. So I'm going to do a functional ramp up so I can better lead this team as I'm building my behavioral process to add value to them as I come in. That was the only other time where I was like, oh, geez, can I do this one? This is a new industry. They got me that opportunity and we had 6 great years together. So again, if you're convinced your behavior is demonstrated and can work where they're going, draw those two things together. I did want to talk about, I know we're running out of time because we try to keep these to half an hour. In my sales training, I talk about a boomerang fact, right? And that boomerang fact is, what do you do that no one else does? So when you throw that in properly to the conversation, it will always bring the customer back to you if they're shopping your competitors. So now that we're talking Fusion, the whole team there would know we talked about our Terrion Awards at the time. They had won 6 of the last 8 years. There's only one winner per year, and it's voted on by the actual customer and how that experience was in getting their home. And so I knew if we brought that into the dialogue and people went to other home builders, because they do, one of their questions if quality was important to them would be, how many Terrion Awards have you guys won? Because it's an independent award from the homeowner saying who the best is. We haven't won any, but we do believe in quality. And okay, well, there's a really good chance they're coming back because they can't find that elsewhere, but it's got to be in the context of what's important to them. So the customer who doesn't care about quality and tells you, I'm shopping on price and price only, the Terry Award is not going to mean much. So you got to do it in the context of what's important to them. So in an interviewing perspective, my boomerang fact, and I'm not the only one to have done it, but I would challenge you that a lot of leaders, department leaders, don't. I build behavior-based training. HR doesn't, third parties don't. I get in, I understand our business, and I build my program, and I measure the shit out of it, and I recognize my people, and I coach them, and it's all aligned to what that experience should look like, and I build that. Well, that's my boomerang fact as an executive when I go into an interview. And if they're talking about growth on the strength of their people, now my boomerang fact's coming out, and I'm speaking to it loudly in my interview to say, listen, I want to tell you, like, I know we want to scale, and I love that you guys understand that your biggest investment is going to be in people because that's how organizations scale. I want to tell you about my sales training in this senior role in sales. I've built it in organizations. I will build it here. I build a mystery shopping program to support it, and then we're going to tie all of our bonus metrics into those behaviors. I don't outsource it. It's not going to cost you a third-party provider. It's what I believe is going to be our foundation to create that growth and scale. Now, that's my friggin' boomerang fact. And so what you want to do is you want to find out what makes you different than all the other candidates. And when you can align it to what's important to the company, you're home free.
Does it look bad if they say, do you have any questions at the end of the interview? And you say, no, I don't think I have any questions.
Yeah, it looks terrible.
Yeah.
I think most hiring managers would tell you that.
Yeah.
Well, because what it says without saying it is you didn't do any research. You didn't care enough to find out about us, and there's not something that you learned that you want to confirm. And so I always say that question time is critical. And on that context of boomerang facts, if I haven't been able to get it out, I want to use that research to ask a question that's going to let me get it out. Hey, you guys have scaled in growth over the last 5 years. I was looking at your board reports that are public on your website. You've had an average of 137% growth year over the last 5 years. That is tremendous. How much has training employees played a part of that? Why? Because I wanted to come right back to that answer. If it doesn't, and it's like, well, we don't really train here. We expect people to kind of raise their own bar and do their own thing and get better at the job. Oh, I understand. And do you think you could accelerate that result if there was a process in place that would add to that learning, right? Just departmentally, not HR, just, the way we engage with it. And so I'm always leading those questions back to show them that I research what their number one priority, and it's an opportunity for me to confirm when they answer that I can add value to that. It's just a sale. The problem is people think about it being a sale as being slimy and talking about everything you can do, which people who sell that way are slimy. That's why I don't train that way. But now I want to find out what's important to you. And in this case, it's your organization and you as the hiring manager. And I want to demonstrate from my experience of why I'm the safe bet and the right person to bring into the role. That was 30 minutes. That's probably going to get you a job. You're welcome. Not cocky at all, eh?
Why don't we talk about, do you think after this we could talk about your first 3 months in a new role and what you should be looking for when you go into an organization?
Yeah, for sure. If you're, do you want to talk about it from an onboarding and employee perspective, or the employee and what the first 90 days should do to best get them
as an employee starting somewhere new?
Yeah.
Like, it always takes you a little while to get the lay of the land, but like, how can you best
get smashed at the first corporate party?
Oh, don't do that.
Just get hammered.
Don't do that. Anyway, just think about our next topics, but we'll talk about that and post for next week. And I guess that's it for today.
Yes. Happy Thursday. I hope everybody enjoys the Masters. Go Tiger.
I know where Mark will be.
Go Mike Weir. Go Mackenzie Hughes. I think Mackenzie's in it. Hadwin's got to be in it. Adam Hadwin in it.
Did he win a major?
I don't think you have to win a major. I think you have to win a tournament in the previous calendar year that's part of the tour.
Oh, I thought it was a major.
No, I think you have to win a tournament. And if you win, well, certain tournaments that qualify, and I think it's all the regular stops, gets you to the Masters. And if you're a past Masters winner, you're invited for life. Hence the reason
I knew that.
Mike Weir is still there. God bless him. He seems to be playing well.
Alrighty.
Cheers, everybody.
Have a great day.
Okay, can you do your thing?